Welcome to TulsaCountyLAning's first podcast of 2010. My name is Corey, and I'm sitting here with David Haste.
Hi, guys.
Dr. Zeb. And Mike Sider. Slayer. Alright, today we're going to review Twilight Princess, Legend of Zelda on Wii. Let's start with some opening comments. Mike, you start us off.
As you guys know, this game came out, a while ago. It was a Wii debut title, originally meant for the GameCube. Now, this is an older game, and I know we're covering this a while back, but we're going to look back now that we've actually played through the game, and we can take a look back without the nostalgia hype that's behind this game. David, your comments.
I was simply blown away. It was one of those games that from this, once you get through those first two dungeons, you're hooked. I played it consecutively. Once I got into it, it was like I was taken into it. The map was huge. I really felt like I was in Hyrule. It was just amazing.
And aside from the fact of it being starting out, the whole young Link, Toon Link, whatever you want to call it aside, you start as Link, period.
A teen Link.
It was sort of like a progression into him. So you kind of had this feeling like you were him. You saw young,
right.
And then and I love the part like you were like the defender of this little village. That was just awesome. I thought it was like you kind of had like a camaraderie. I really thought that was cool.
Okay.
Definitely before any other Zelda game, the NPCs felt a little more personal this time. They weren't just little characters to help you along. You felt an emotional connection, maybe a little bit more than any previous Zelda game, to help them, within the defense of your small, village, within the forest village, that you started off in. Yeah. But as you progress through the game, you got to know a lot more of the other villages.
Okay, well, what about what was memorable moments? What was a big one for you, Corey?
The meeting of Midna. First off, I have to say I love Midna. Midna's an excellent character, and she was a great role as, slightly protagonist, antagonist going on there. When you first turn into the wolf, meet her, and the census thing was really cool.
Oh, yeah, you were just taken away, man. You were in another world,
right.
Holy crap, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, the game definitely started off, whenever you meet Midna, it feels totally different. It kind of blindsides you a little bit of the different gameplay when you're playing as Wolf Link, and then you have Midna, and you're not so sure of the character. You're not really sure if she's on your side or against your side.
Exactly.
And you feel like you're just kind of a tool used by her to accomplish some means that you're not sure of quite yet.
And, you are the wolf, man. You have the wolf's powers, but at the same time, you can do every move that Link does. And then later in the game, you'll be able to, okay, oh, well, that's how I get through that puzzle. I wasn't supposed to get it through Link. I was supposed to actually be the wolf.
Yes.
And the whole shadow world being, the state between, you kind of get, this life and death sort of thing. You can see souls and shit like that. It was just sort of a sort of spiritual little eerie thing, so it kind of had a little scary thing to it, but not too much. And so it kind of brought a little, the whole little dark thing to it.
Maybe a little bit reminiscent of what they might call Zelda 3, A Link to the Past, which was the Super Nintendo one, which had a light world and a dark world. And then, of course, Ocarina of Time, which, in my opinion, I considered a 3D version of Link to the Past, had a light world and a dark world, in which you were young Link and an older Link. But definitely in this version, they had different tasks to accomplish in the light world as the Wolf Link and then as the human Link.
Now, what do you guys problems? Every game, I don't care how perfect it is, there's always some sort of problems with it.
Criticisms.
Corey,
you go ahead with your criticisms.
Well, as far as the Wii's motion controls, I couldn't find too much to hint on, just little nitpicks. The swordplay was, that's something I wanted to talk about. At times, it felt laggy for me. I don't know if that was just me or if any of you others are having a...
There was a couple times that I had to jog the thing a couple times to the right when I wanted to do a whirlwind and instead of doing a spike.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's of course gonna come out of it. I mean this was the motion control, man. I mean this was one of the first games that they did with it.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. I mean, you have to understand that Twilight Princess was originally meant to be a GameCube title, and it was delayed. There was a huge build-up for the hype of its release, and eventually they put it on the GameCube. So we can't make our criticism too harsh because of the fact that it was put out on the Wii late. In fact, I'd like to point out for some of our listeners that the Wii version, just to make the fact that Link, his swordplay was originally always left-handed. If you noted from the old school Zelda games, he was always left-handed.
Mm-hmm.
For the Wii version, they made him right-handed because most people are right-handed. A bias against our commentator Corey Ramey, who is left-handed. The Wiimote, exactly. The Wiimote was a right-handed sword swing. So what they had to do was take the maps and everything in the game and flip it. So if you play the GameCube version of Twilight Princess, you are playing everything flipped. Everything that was on the right is now to the left. That's just kind of something that blew my mind when I actually got a hold of the guide for the game. The guide for the game has a GameCube version and a Wii version, flipped left and right.
Now, Mike, one thing you like to talk about was a pro with the archery aiming. Now, explain that using the Wii remote.
I will say right now that the Wii version is superior to any other version that would use a joystick, being the GameCube. Since the 64 version of Zelda, you had to use a joystick to aim with, say, your bow and arrow and your slingshot and things like that. Little bit stiff. But one thing I had to admit that was a big improvement for the entire Zelda series was definitely using the Wii motion controls to aim with archery. You're on horseback moving at the same time, and it seemed much fluid and more easy to use the Wiimote to aim, to take out enemies to your sides with your archery while swiping your sword at the same time. Definitely a big improvement.
David, your comments.
Well, I mean, I enjoyed that. I thought it was really cool. I mean, you actually felt like you were two entities moving. I mean, you were on the horseback, and you sort of felt like you had this turret sort of feeling on the horseback. So like you're like, okay, well I'm on a horse now, and I can actually accurately aim by instead of using a controller where I'm only I would obviously be controlling the horse with a joystick. I can do it actually easier now by pointing and using the nunchuck. That was awesome. As for complaints, I mean, we talked about this earlier, well, off mic, but well, the whole kind of intertwining Ganondorf into the game when really you'll find out, I don't want to ruin anything, At
this point, everybody who's listening to this podcast should have played the game.
Yeah, at least, have some feel for it. But if you're middle of the game, maybe towards the end, if you haven't already noticed, it's more about Zant, and you really don't hear anything about Ganondorf. Well,
the story.
Yeah, Ganondorf is always being, the protagonist in the game feels kind of tacked on, or the antagonist, excuse me. So that was my only complaint with it. Other than that, I mean, controls. There was a couple times where I tried to do a front attack, or I tried to get behind the enemy and slash them, and I couldn't just because of the responsiveness. But like Mike said, it was not originally made for the motion control stuff. But no, I mean, out of that though, the archery was probably my favorite thing, and
let's talk about that a little bit more. The inclusion of Ganondorf almost seemed arbitrary, like mid to late period in the